Hello, Ottawa Senators fans. This is your Game On Ottawa for October 23rd, 2024. The Sens have just come off a pretty good win against the Utah Hockey Club, but the biggest question is, can Tkachuk and Stützle lead the team to something that they've had struggles with in recent years, and that's winning on road trips? This is your October 23rd Game On News. But before we get into the news for today, a quick little ad for Hyperdrive Hockey. Hyperdrive Hockey is Game Over Network's flagship podcast with Max and Daphne. They're talking about all the Canadian teams and big news happening across the NHL, and in fact, their episode that just came out the other day talked about the Sens a little bit as well. So if you're interested in a little bit more perspective on the Sens from an outside perspective, please tune in to Hyperdrive Hockey. It's not only here on YouTube on the Game Over Network channel, but it's also on thegameovernetwork.com, and it covers a variety of topics, so you won't be bored. Make sure to tune in to Hyperdrive Hockey on the Game Over Network. It's going to be every Tuesday and Friday episodes of Hyperdrive Hockey, not only here on YouTube, but also on Spotify, and make sure to tune in every week when it comes to these conversations that the Game Over Network is going to have, either on YouTube or thegameovernetwork.com. So, when it comes to the Sens of recent years, the starts of the year have always been tough for them. And while I feel like highlighting the win is important, an even more key thing to highlight is the performances of our best players. And it's hard to say Brady Tkachuk hasn't been one of the better players for the Senators to start the year. In fact, he's actually running a point streak starting from the first game of the season against the Panthers that's still going up until Game 6 and heading into Game 7 against Vegas. As you can see, I put a card up here to reflect that, and not only that, I actually showed exactly how those points are distributed. He's got 8 points in 6 games, with 1 assist in most games, but 3 points in the win over the Kings, of which I also have here on the board. And I feel like Brady Tkachuk obviously is leading the team by example. He has to. He's the captain. But it's also a great show that he's really wanting to change the narrative on what the Sens have been in recent years. He really wants the Sens to take that next step, and this point streak, I feel, might be a really key factor to that. We'll see whether he keeps that up in wins and losses as well, but I really can see Tkachuk as the leader of this team, not only as the captain, but as the points leader as well, if this streak can continue going. And Tim Stützle is also not far behind, matched with him on points, though not rocking the same point streak. And he's also been great to start the year. As I mentioned last episode, he's actually leading the team in hits, or one of the last episodes at least. And we'll see if Brady Tkachuk can maybe catch up on the hit marker while still leading the team as one of the best point getters. But before we go too much into detail with what's happening in the near future, let's talk a little bit about the win that just happened. In fact, it's a pretty significant milestone for the Sens. This is their first shutout win of the year. I didn't put a card up for it because I feel like the win over Utah, it's not as important as the wins over Colorado and Vegas are going to be in the next two games. But it's going to be an interesting point nonetheless. They won 4-0 with Anton Forsberg, who kind of came in to replace Ullmark kind of last minute, actually getting a 31-save shutout. There were plenty of standouts in that game, and even though it was a game where the Sens didn't look better 5-on-5, they won pretty significantly thanks to a really, really good first period where they scored all 4 of their goals. Nick Jensen, I believe, was probably my standout. Unfortunately, I didn't watch the game from start to finish. I only saw the highlights, but a lot of people who I saw online talked about Nick Jensen as one of the better players in that game in particular, and the stats showed so as well, getting 2 big assists on 2 big goals in the first period. The funny thing is, this actually matches a pretty crazy stat that the Sens had last season. In fact, the Sens were known for being a tough team to play against at home, but as soon as they went on the road, it was a different story. Though not necessarily on the road in the Eastern time zone. In fact, outside the Eastern time zone, they had 1 win last year. And you can go back and check, that is true. They had 1 win over a team that wasn't in the Eastern time zone last year. Their road trips were killer for them for trying to build up any momentum throughout the season. And with this win over Utah that just happened, they already matched their amount of wins outside the Eastern time zone from last year. It's funny because it actually kind of matches a stat we had on the first episode of Game On, where Stützle matched his power play goal performance from last year in the first game. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of the season to go, and it's likely that both Stützle and the Sens are going to get more than just the 1 goal and the 1 win, but we'll have to wait and see. There is a chance that they both could just never do anything ever again in terms of usefulness, but the likelihood of that, I would say, is near zero. Another funny thing that happened, actually, is that Utah lost their first ever home game to the Ottawa Senators. Not that this was their first home game ever, but they were on a winning streak at home, and this was their first ever home loss. And so now if anyone asks you, as a little trivia question, what is the first home game the Utah Hockey Club ever lost, you can say proudly the Ottawa Senators. And funnily enough, even after that first period where Utah did have some really, really good chances to start with the game, and then the Sens came back and scored 4 goals, the fans booed them off the ice, which for a team that's currently 4-2-1 even after the loss to the Sens, and that was their first home loss ever, it's kind of weird that the Sens made the opposing fans boo their pretty good team off the ice. As for updates when it comes to the Sens in terms of their next game, which as you can see I put up here is going to be against Vegas later on this week, this is a full off day for the Sens, so no lineup changes, no roster changes, no injury changes as of today, though it does seem like Ullmark, especially with the rest day he was given against Utah, is likely going to get one of the 2 starts against Colorado or Vegas. We have yet to see which one is which, and honestly I think the Sens would probably make more sense to keep the hot hand rolling because of how good Forsberg played against Utah. So I could see the reasoning with Forsberg playing against Vegas or Ullmark playing against Vegas. Both of them I think are fine because the Sens have proven to themselves in that Utah game that even if their 5-on-5 play isn't good, Forsberg has the potential to actually win them games, not just have slow starts and lose them like not only he did earlier this year against the Kings, but also in the previous season. I think this was a really big game for Forsberg, especially after those double knee injuries that he faced. This was a great shutout just for the story of his career, and obviously all the love to not only Forsberg, but all the goaltenders who have gone through the Ottawa Senators system and not had probably their just desserts. Though, for October 23rd, 2024, that is all. I'm Michael Czar. That was your Game Over Ottawa Daily News, and I'll make sure to update you more tomorrow on what the Sens are going to run heading up against Vegas to continue this 3-game road trip.